he slammed me on the floor at the foot of his bed.
What did he do after he slammed you on the floor at the foot of his bed?
Well, it startled me. It didn't hurt, but it startled me, and so I kind of let out an unexpected sound. I guess it could be best described as a yelp, sort of. Can't really explain it. It just was unexpected, so it startled me, and then the impact and the sound came out. And I think he misinterpreted because he said, "Don't act like that hurts," and he kicked me in the ribs, and that hurt for real.
All right, interesting lady. Joining me now in my panel, former Assistant DA Dan Shore, who ran for DA in Westchester County, who's now with Kroll Associates, criminal defense attorney Bill Ehrenwald, former head of the New York Strike Force, and my good friend, the professor of psychiatry at Harvard University, Dr. John Sharp, and from Radar Online, Alexis Tereszczuk, who's been following the trial. All right, Doc, I got to start with you. This woman strikes me as a cold person who is acting, but she can't really act.
And she acts so well that she doesn't even recognize that she's doing it. You know, you look into those eyes, there's no emotion. It's not like your twinkle, Judge. It's like this black abyss. You know, her feeling is all put away in some place so far, you can't even relate to her.
Yeah, but she's not insane, and they're not offering an insanity defense bill because she lied so many times, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, this is a classic textbook case of how not to defend a client charged with murder. I mean, it really is.
Why?
Well, first of all, you know, most defense lawyers will tell you they don't want to put their client on the stand unless they have to.
Right.
Okay, now when your claim is self-defense, you have to. But you don't put your client on the stand for 6 days and have her testify about everything else except why it was self-defense, which is what she's done. So,
right. But they're still on direct now. 6 days of testimony. They haven't gotten to the fact she stabbed him 28 times, almost cut his head off and shot him.
No, but you also want the jury to like her. And if you watch her testimony, there's nothing that she's saying.
Well, I didn't like her the first day I saw her, but I mean,
well,
Alexis,
because you see no emotion. That's why. And by the way, I think she's morally insane.
Well, I'm not going there yet. Alexis, you've been in the courtroom. I mean, how does she come across?
She comes across as this meek little, just girl that has been so tortured. But the thing is, I've spoken to so many of Travis's friends who have met her repeatedly, and they say this is nothing what she's like in real life. She is acting, she's pretending. She was outgoing, bubbly, vivacious, and now that this is a show, and they said she's absolutely acting, and they said they can tell because she hesitates when she talks because she's trying to think of what her real story is. Yeah, she's thinking where it was in
the script. Okay, Dan.
Judge, she's supposedly raising a self-defense claim. She hasn't raised one fact in her testimony over 6 days that makes out any kind of justification claim that there was
wait a minute. What was that line that he said, as if I raped you? What was that about?
Right, that was during phone sex, but not on the day.
During phone sex, it's okay?
It's not okay, but it doesn't make out a self-defense claim that of an imminent threat of harm at the time that he was, as you said, stabbed multiple times, shot, slashed from ear to ear. She's been talking for 6 days. It's like a friend telling you a long story and never getting to the point. It's frustrating, and the jury's not going to care as much by the end of the story.
One of the problems that you have in the self-defense case, this case is, you know, that this fellow was shot, his throat was slit, and he was stabbed 27 times. That's not self-defense. That's rage, that's anger, that's lack of control.
Let me throw in there that the camera, the memory card from the camera of his being dragged across the floor, she tried to wash in a washing machine. Is that crazy?
That's crazy. And Judge, when she tells the story, like a lot of patients I've seen who have some kind of severe personality disorder, not that I can diagnose her across TV, but like a lot of patients...
You already diagnosed her. You said she's morally insane. I don't even want to go into what that means.
But she paints this landscape, right? But she doesn't put herself in it. It's all this stuff, and where's her action? Where is her role? She leaves that out.
Is she medicated? Is she medicated?
She's not over-medicated. I don't see any signs of her being heavily medicated.
So what's with the lack of affect?
That's her pathology. That's what is pathognomonic. That's the cardinal sign of her severe personality problem.
Judge, most likely she's going to be convicted. She needs sympathy from the jury so she's not executed at the end, get the death penalty. And
that's off the table.
She's not
once she started with the phone sex, and maybe they accomplished what they wanted to.
I really have a problem with the fact that she's been on the stand this long because, you know, once she loses credibility with the jury on any issue, then when it gets to the meat and potatoes of having to explain why this is self-defense, the jury's going to tune her out.
All right, but is the jury buying any of this?
In the beginning, the jury bought everybody else's. No, they're really not buying Jodi. Some of them won't even look her in the eye. They have nothing to do with it. You know, it's 11 men and 1 woman. And you would...
Really?
It is.
It's 11 men,
11 men and 1 woman. So, Jodi...
Pick that jury. That defense right off the bat, I would appeal based on that.
You know, Alexis talks about the jury not looking her in the eye. If on the tape, the portion of the tape you were playing before, her defense lawyer won't even look her in the eye.
You know, there's an old saying about when you stare into the abyss stares back at you. I think people are afraid. You look into those eyes, it's scary. It's just black.
The key thing is eventually she's going to talk about the day Travis Alexander was shot, and nothing she can say would make out a self-defense claim where she stabs him almost 30 times, shoots him in the face,
Well,
and
but that's what the
lies
whole
about
thing
it
is. Look,
after.
he bought her underwear with his name on it. Ergo,
That's not actually-
she's
But
a
that's
victim.
controlling, but there is
Might
there
not
an
even be
imminent
true.
threat at the time. And why does she lie about it after? Why does she say she wasn't there, and then she says that 2 masked intruders
You
came
know
and
what?
killed them both?
You know what the answer for that was? Why she lied and said she wasn't there? Because she had never been charged with something before. Did you read that?
That's what this
that
man
make
who's
any
visiting
sense?
her every
No.
day.
And the real reason
Nothing about this case makes sense.
The real
from
reason is they
defense
hadn't
point of view.
confronted her with the evidence showing that she was at the scene. Then she had to change her story to say, oh, there were
Yeah,
masked
she's lying.
intruders.
I know why, but I mean, you know, this whole idea of her being a victim is fascinating. Let me just go to you one last time, Doctor, on her issue of her ability to kill someone. She's got no criminal record. All right, we know she was jealous because he was taking some other broad on, some other, very sorry, put the camera on me. I'm very sorry. From her perspective, there was someone else that
Well,
he was
she
going
couldn't
away with.
tolerate that loss. That was the whole trigger. I
Right, but
believe.
there's nothing in her history that says she's capable of killing someone like this.
Right, that's why it's so frightening. The best predictor of violence is a history of violence. But
Right.
here you have some woman who, for no fault of her own, was so fractured in her psyche that she reached out and surprised us all with her rage. It's a crime of terrible passion, but no one saw it coming.
Yeah. All right. And finally, before we go to break here, Alexis, is there anything that you were able to find out about her that we're not seeing in the courtroom?
Well, y'all were talking about the underwear. There is no proof that Travis actually bought this underwear for her. There were never any pictures of her before in it.
point.
She never sent him a picture of her in it. He loved naked pictures of her. Nothing. The pictures, the only ones that showed up were after he had died, that she took them perfectly. So
That is
that might be
moral
another one of her
insanity.
lies.
Dr. Sharp, you are right. That is moral insanity. Now, up next, the man known as a Blade Runner faces charges of murder. And don't forget to weigh in on our Insta poll. Is $500 enough for those cruise ship passengers who had to walk in a lot of stuff? If not, what is? Tweet me at Judge Jeanine or tell me what you think on Facebook. South African runner Oscar Pistorius, known as the Blade Runner because of the carbon fiber blades he runs on, was charged Friday with premeditated murder. His girlfriend, model Reva Steenkamp, was shot 4 times through a bathroom door in Pistorius' home early Valentine's Day morning. According to a South African newspaper, Steenkamp was killed nearly 2 hours after police had already been called to Pistorius' home to respond to reports by neighbors of an argument. Back with me is my panel, Dan Shore, Bill Ehrenwald, Dr. John Sharp, and Radar Online reporter Alexis Tereszczuk. Okay, now, we all watched this guy, Oscar Pistorius, when he was in the Paralympics and then in the Olympics, and we rooted for him. What do you know about him?
Well, he had his legs amputated as a child, and it's amazing that he overcame the odds to become not just someone who can walk, someone who could run, but someone who could run in the Olympics without having his real legs. Now, the thing is, he's this inspirational figure, but as we know, just because someone's larger than life and seems kind, you don't know what their secret life is. You don't know what they're like at home, especially in domestic violence situations. They could have a violent side to them, and we'll see here what the
so
truth is.
look, we're looking at him right now on the screen. I mean, this guy has tremendous motivation. He's got a tremendous competitive streak in him, but there's nothing that indicates in his background, is there, that he has any violence?
Well, there's been domestic violence incidents related to him, not arrests,
what does
but
that
there's
mean,
been
Dan?
calls.
What's an incident?
Well, the police said that there have been reports that they had to respond to related to domestic incidents. That's all the police
this
said.
woman?
They didn't
the
specify.
defense
They didn't specify,
Well,
but
in the past, they had been called in other instances of arguing back and forth.
But physical?
No, I'm not aware of anything that's been reported where there was any indication that he physically assaulted anybody. It was just loud arguing and verbally abusive.
But the police have responded on multiple occasions.
Okay, but do we know anything about the police responding 2 hours before he shot her?
All we know is basically that there were reports that neighbors or passers-by had heard loud arguing inside, and it was enough that they called the police and the police responded.
Alexis?
But the police have been very tight-lipped about this. They haven't said whether or not they actually spoke with her. They just said that they responded to the home and then they left. So his argument has been that he was startled by an intruder, which just doesn't jive with the fact that she was there and the police were there 2 hours earlier. They're probably...
and I guess they don't have FOIL where we can get this information right away.
Not yet.
But go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say there were media reports saying that he was surprised by an intruder. We'll see what he raises as a defense as the case proceeds.
Well, those reports are coming from his camp, I assume.
No, I don't believe that statement is from his camp. His camp is just denying strenuously that he committed intentional murder, but the parts about the intruder have not officially come from his camp.
You know, from a defense standpoint.
Well, you think the police sent it? The police said it, Dan?
There's been South African media reports, and as far as I'm aware, they're not directly sourced to the police or to the family.
Well, I don't know who else would be saying, it was an intruder he was shooting at.
Well, media reporting.
From a defense point of view, looking at this, if your claim is going to be that he thought it was an intruder, there are some problems that he has to overcome to achieve that. First of all, he lived in a gated community, which means that there were security guards there to keep out unwanted guests or intruders, number one. Number two, she was behind a closed bathroom door.
And I'm going to get into that when we come back from the break. I mean, to me, that's the key. Yeah. Shot 4 times in the bathroom behind the door, so the bullets went through the door. Up next, more on the Blade Runner case. And he usually fights the bad guys. Our creep of the week is Spider-Man, who punches innocent moms in the face. What a creep.
Any size, catch your speed, just like flies, look out. Here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong?
After consulting with our legal representatives, we deeply regret the allegations of premeditated murder. We have no doubt here is no substance for the allegations.
Under South African law, a person who fatally shoots an intruder must prove that he had a reasonable fear that the intruder posed a threat to his life. But if Reva was shot through the bathroom door 4 times, how much of a threat could she have been? Back with me, my expert panel. Before I get to those legal questions, Dr. Sharp, based upon, what we know about the history of Oscar Pistorius and his competition and who he is, what insight does that give you as a psychiatrist?
Well, he's a high-intensity guy. He's obviously quick off the blocks. He was worried about home invasion. He had a machine gun, a gun, 2 bats. He was... in numerous times in vehicle accidents. He was in a motor vehicle accident and a boat accident. He had 170 stitches. So he's a pumped-up guy, and it's possible, that all of a sudden at night, maybe he wasn't in the best state of mind to use perfect judgment. He overreacted. I don't know.
But when you say he wasn't in the best state of mind, it's not like he had an alcohol problem or a drug problem. I mean, it's Valentine's morning. It's 3 in the morning, and he was arguing with someone 2 hours earlier.
Yeah, it doesn't really add up. It doesn't add up. I try to, take the best possible scenario.
But let's talk about her. I mean, she was beautiful. And in fact, she had a reality show that aired tonight for the first time. She was an advocate for domestic violence victims. Does that say anything about her relationship with him? Do we know how she got involved in this?
She met him. They met at an awards show back in the fall. They have been so happy. She has been very outspoken on Twitter about how much she loves him because he respects her. She spoke about that often. So the fact that there was a domestic violence call seems the opposite of the way that she conducts her life. And in fact, she was going to give a speech today, I believe, talking about, supporting rape survivors. So it's something that nobody knew in her history, but there have been ex-girlfriends who have come forward and said they did have a bad relationship, and even mothers of other ex-girlfriends saying they were terrified for their own daughter's safety while they were dating him.
And, given that, Dan, what do you do as a defense attorney there?
You have to find out, I guess, what his version is. I know that one thing I want to find out is, what did he do immediately after the shooting? Did he immediately call for help? Did he immediately call the police?
My understanding, Dan, is that he was carrying her down the stairs.
What was
to
he
give her
saying to
mouth
people?
to mouth, to resuscitate
Yeah.
her. He was trying to
But
resuscitate.
what was he saying? Was he saying, I just accidentally shot her, I thought she was an intruder, or was he saying things in rage? These are things we need to know. It's so early on.
Well, we don't even know whether or not he was actually asleep at the time, heard some noises, basically grabbed the gun. We don't know that they were necessarily living together, so he may have actually thought there was an intruder in the house and basically
They weren't
fired.
living together. My
He came
understanding
over,
is
is what
she
I
came
heard.
over.
And he
And
was
he may not have
surprised by
expected
that.
her. He
What
may
about
not-
the emotion in court, Judge? Did you see when he was really emoting?
Yeah, you tell me
loudly
about that. I
crying?
mean, I'd cry my eyes out too if somebody were charging me with premeditated murder.
And that's a real affect. That's a real response. I mean, he
look
really
at the difference
was...
between Jodi Arias
Exactly.
and this guy, both charged with murdering their lover.
But crying-
What struck me as odd was that he was sobbing audibly, and the magistrate, the judge, was the one who was calming him down, saying, "Calm down, take it easy, sit down."
He's a
Interesting.
national hero for
He
them,
is a
though.
national
He is a
hero.
national hero. He's been protected for years.
And visibly upset.
Anything that happens to
O.J.
him.
redo.
I don't know. I don't know about this one yet. I don't have a take
The
on it.
crying in court is just as consistent with guilt as with innocence, so we don't know what that means. We need to know a lot
I
more.
assume there's a presumption of innocence at this
There is, even in South
All right,
Africa.
that's the judge, not the DA. Anyway, Dan, Bill, Dr. Sharp, Alexis, great to have you guys here this evening.